Hello there, I'm Rhett Collins, and for my Russian project, I decided to do something that I found very interesting and that I've seen many other people be interested over as well, and that would be the Gopnik subculture in Russia. It's a subculture form. Many subcultures are found all over the world. This one has been prevalent in different parts and provinces of Russia since about the late 80s. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So what is a Gopnik? Well, a Gopnik is a member of the Russian Gopnik subculture. These are typically young white males that are found in different parts of Russia. This term is usually used in a derogatory form because the Gopniks themselves actually practice prison culture. They commit crimes together and are overall very much like a gang. The Gopniks also set themselves apart from other people in society by their aggressive nature. They're typically more hostile to others than each other. The Gopniks fit into an extremely tight stereotype. Usually it's someone wearing an Adidas tracksuit while squatting around in multiple places. They also like to wear flat caps very often, or baseball caps, and are famous for that as well. Stereotypically, the Gopniks are usually found eating semichki and drinking cheap beer or vodka, as well as smoking cheap cigarettes. For this reason, it's said that many people don't like them being around because they typically make a mess and litter. This subculture exists all over the Russian Federation, and due to my research, I found out that it actually exists outside of Russia as well, in areas like Poland and other Slavic countries. For a reason that I will get to in a moment, the Gopniks are usually found in poorer regions of Russia. Usually these regions are working class citizens who don't have anywhere to go and aren't always employed. Sometimes the Gopniks are unemployed. The Gopniks are usually young adult white males, and their age is usually ranging from their 20s to their 30s. Sometimes there are also females with them, whom they call the Gopnitsa. Our caption over here on the side describing this picture says Gopnik I drug, which translates roughly to Gopnik and friend. As you can see, they're squatting together, drinking some cheap alcohol and smoking cigarettes with their Adidas on and their baseball caps, a very common Gopnik activity. Something I found to be very interesting about the Gopniks was the origin of the name. A lot of people weren't very sure where the name came from, and when researching it, I found a lot of different sources saying a lot of different things about it. But the one thing the most had in common was that they all believed it probably came from the term gopstop. A gopstop was a robbery on the street performed by Gopniks in Russia. They used to be much more common than they are nowadays, and so now the term is a little aged. The Gopniks themselves don't actually use the term Gopnik for each other. When they talk about each other, they actually use the name guy or normal guy. It's like talking about a friend. They refer to each other as normal guys, and that's how they truly see each other. It really shows how much of a community that they've come to form with each other. Over here on the side, in our picture, the caption reads, Gopniki snarutsi. This translates to Gopniks outside. As you can see, they're in a public area squatting together, surely enjoying some drinks and conversating. Below that picture, we can see the caption that says Gopnik presupsi. This translates to criminal Gopnik, because the Gopniks are usually found with weapons, which they trade in other areas where they're more common. The one here is an AK-47, which is very common in Russia. Alright, the Slav squat. Now you've probably been wondering so far why in every single picture that I've shown, the Gopniks have been squatting. Well, that's because they practice this squat that they call the Slav squat. They are extremely particular about how to do the squat. If you do it wrong, they will chastise you non-stop. The squat requires you to put your heels flat on the ground and then have your arms loosely above your knees. You should almost be touching the ground by the time you're in the full squat. Picking up your heels is forbidden and would automatically ruin the squat. I'd seen this before many times, but wasn't quite sure where it originated. When I searched it up, I came to find out that it actually originated in Russian prisons. The prisoners would squat like this to avoid sitting on the cold ground, so that way they could rest in an easy state. The Gopniks have adapted to this squat. They actually do this in public very often. They'll squat together in groups while sharing drinks or snacks. They think that the squat is very comfortable. From my research and from trying it out myself, it's actually very difficult for people who aren't used to this squat. Over here on the side, we see a picture of a group of Gopniks sitting together in the squat formation. The caption reads, Gopnik Grupa. This means Gopnik group. Below that, we see a picture of a Gopnik with his family, most of them squatting around in the formation. The caption reads, Gopnik se семьей. This means Gopnik with family. So all this information about Gopniks really begs the question, where did the Gopniks themselves come from? Where did the subculture actually originate? Surprisingly enough, it actually originated in economic reform. All throughout the 60s, an economic reform was taking place in Russia. At the end of the 1970s in Russia, an economic boom actually required more people to move to the cities to work. People moved in from rural areas and moved into the more urban cities, but there actually was not enough housing at the time to keep all of the people that were moving in from across Russia. To make room for all of the workers that were now moving into the cities, they just started to make giant high-rise apartment buildings. These were built all across the nations and near areas where people would need the work. These buildings housed massive amounts of people. They were huge and they weren't really the best buildings, so the rent actually ended up being very, very cheap. Due to the rent being so cheap, people actually started moving in strictly for this purpose. They didn't even have a job near the area where they were supposed to be working at, depending on the buildings. They just wanted the cheap living. So the people who could afford to pay the rent started to move in. They didn't contribute anything to society, and they weren't actually doing any of the jobs that were supposed to be done. They were just moving into these areas and filling them up together. These individuals then all met each other since they lived in the same communities now. So, a bunch of people living in the same communities who weren't contributing to society started to make a subculture of their own. They would loiter and harass and commit crimes with each other. Thus, they formed the community and called themselves the Gopniks. The first caption reads, Balshaya Kvartira. This means big apartment. Above that, you can see a picture of these apartments. Below it reads, Eta Kvartira Perapotevnene. This reads that the apartment is crowded. Nowadays, the Gopniks are actually more famous for not being as criminal as they used to be. Now they're famous for their love of semichki, which are Russian sunflower seeds. They also love to drink light beer and vodka as well as smoke lots of cheap cigarettes. They're notoriously patriotic, however, and they hold pro-Russian ideals. They're typically very anti-Western in their terms of politics and how they view other countries. For their music, they enjoy hip-hop, rap, and hard bass. Over here, we have a caption that reads, Babushkini Semichki. This means Grandma's sunflower seeds, a favorite of the Gopnik. Below that, we see a Gopnik squatting with his seeds, and a caption that reads, Gopnik I Shemitsky. Hard bass. In the 1990s, hard bass music originated in Russia. This originated alongside of electronic music throughout Europe and North America. Soon, this music itself actually became very popular with the Gopnik subculture. They started to play this music in their groups while squatting around, and then soon after that, they actually started contributing to the genre itself. They would start to make their own hard bass songs. It became very common for Gopniks to listen and dance to hard bass instead of committing crimes and doing other criminal activities like they used to. Today, almost every single hard bass artist is a self-considered Gopnik. They make the music themselves instead of committing crimes with the other one. Surprisingly enough, this genre of music actually became very, very popular around the world, with songs pulling in millions upon millions of views, all over the world from different viewers. In fact, a hard bass song called Vodovorot was even featured in the game Just Dance 2020, an extremely famous game from America. The caption reads, Pesna Gopnika, Tri Polosi. This means the Gopnik song Three Stripes. This song is actually extremely famous and has 77 million views on YouTube as of right now. It seems that the Gopniks have changed their ways from being criminals to now being musical artists. Here's my list of sources. The sources from the library actually showed me a lot of information about the origin of the Gopnik name, their behavior, and how they feel about patriotism. Thank you for viewing my presentation on the Gopniks.